Welcome to Business Cake. This is a show where we talk creativity, work, and ideas. Wendy Brand joins Patrick and I for today's conversation. Wendy talks burnout, how to recognize you have it, what to do about it. She walks us through her career, as well as how she got the job to host and coordinate the NCAA 2002 women's and 2004 for men. She walks us through the process of launching her business, Culture Coach. This is a business where she helps organizations integrate and align their values with their mission and vision. Let's dive in. When you left Rackspace, how long were you at Whataburger?
4 years.
Okay. And in HR?
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah. I went in, I was brought in to run like talent strategy.
Okay.
It was about 9 months before the family sold.
Okay.
And then COVID hit.
And just
yeah,
real quick. So for Whataburger, they were family owned, Texas based.
Yes.
And then when the family sold, they sold to a Chicago PE firm or something?
Yeah. But they kept the leadership team intact, except for the CEO. They swapped. Okay. They brought the CFO from another one of the family businesses and put him in as CEO, and then kept the leadership team intact for a bit. And then there started to be a lot of turnover, and so with that turnover, I got more and more responsibility. I ended up overseeing, when I left there, I was leading the training and development team for 50,000 employees, 500 stores, the corporate office. I had over 100 team members that reported in to me, not direct reports, obviously,
right.
A really sizable organization. The first time they'd ever pulled all the training and development together before. So it was a stretch. It was, and then I burned out.
Well, and okay, go on, Patch.
No, I was going to say, did you enjoy that? And then, I was going to ask the question, did you enjoy it? But then you said you burned out. So can you tell us the story behind that?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. And I activator, achiever, responsibility are 3 of my top 5 strengths. So I go get it. I ask for it. I get it done. I think I probably didn't know my own limitations. And what I've learned since about burnout, I've done a lot of research, is that there's the role of the individual, like me setting boundaries and knowing when to say that's enough. And then the role of the organization, that the workload balance and values alignment. Like there were things that were off that I wasn't paying attention to. So I loved it. I love work. I love building teams, high performing teams. So it was fun, until I just had pushed myself physically to a limit that I couldn't handle.
Your body just said, nah.
Yes. Yeah.
No further. Yeah. That's intense. I know just from some conversations with people that made the jump from Rackspace to Whataburger, the way of doing work was very different. How was that transition, making that adjustment?
It's a lot of the reason why I've built the business that I have today. It was a culture shock, and I knew that going in, right? I knew the difference in the way just the organization itself ran. And it wasn't even the pace. At first I was worried about the pace, that it was going to be too slow, but they were in a growth mode. So it wasn't the pace. And especially after they sold, we started moving a lot faster. It was really the leadership style. I think that was the struggle for me. At Rackspace, it was a flat organization. The CEO, at least when I was there, right? I was there from 2007 to 2018, having left for a 3-year stint to go run a business with Steve, my husband. But during my time there, the CEO had a desk like everybody else, right? At Whataburger, on the third floor, the highest floor of the building, behind locked doors that you could only get in with a key card. You walk in, hardwood floors, 4 different receptionists for each executive leader, like very different leadership style. And so I learned to work within that system, but there was a values misalignment for me, I think, from the beginning that caused that internal friction. But it allowed me to see, right, there were plenty of people that worked there that loved what they did, and they were happy to be there and thriving. So what I learned about culture in that was different organizations have different cultures, and different employees feel different ways about those cultures, right? I know plenty of people that went to Rackspace and hated it and left.
Sure.
So it's about the individual and the organization finding that common ground and values.
When you said that was the reason why you launched the business, what's the underlying passion for you and mission?
Yeah. My mission is that I want to help organizations create an environment where their employees and profits thrive, right? So that I believe there's a way to create a business so that employees don't have to burn out, right? There's still that individual piece of it, their responsibility, but the organization can create an environment where they're still thriving from a profit productivity perspective, but also that the employees are engaged and enjoy working there.
Mm-hmm. If you had that Whataburger team as a client, and you're now the culture coach, you're going back to that Whataburger team from 8 years ago or whatever, what would you do?
I wouldn't work with them. So that's the beauty of owning your own business. You get to pick who you work with. And I decided pretty early on that I don't want to try to convince somebody that culture is important. I just want to work with people that get it. And then I've got tools and systems to help them put in place that they can
if they said they wanted it and they wanted to hear you, but they were set up the way that they were, what would you start doing with them?
So fundamental to the work that I do, I first believe that I call it the culture compass, and it's the mission, vision, and core values, right? Super simple stuff that a lot of organizations do. The founders kind of create the mission statement and the vision, maybe the core values, but they don't do anything with it. And really the employees need to understand what the purpose is, what the vision is for the next 5 to 10 years, and then how they're expected to behave. So I would work to make sure that they really start communicating the mission and vision more as part of the DNA of the organization. Every month talking about, here's where we're headed, here's where the gaps are, and then I do have a Thrive framework that's 6 pillars that I would work with them to put into place, starting with integrating their core values.
Would you go as far as getting rid of the third floor, or is that kind of up to them to discover that decision?
So I think for me, if that's the culture they want to have, I think it's okay. I think maybe there's a better way to communicate through the attract phase of the hiring process and the employee, employer branding. Here's who we are as a company, as an employer. And, then it's up to like I said, I knew going in, it probably wasn't the culture it wasn't going to be a good culture fit, but I did it anyway.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's on me. But so I think I would just make sure that the communication is there, that this is who they are as an employer. I don't think you have to have a flat organization for it to be a good organization.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, and the nature of Whataburger being a fast food.
Yeah.
Most of those 50,000, how many employees? 50,000 employees?
Yeah.
Are not at headquarters.
That's right.
At headquarters, you've got, I don't know, how many were working at the Whataburger?
A couple hundred. Not a lot.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's a great point too, is we were very much it wasn't about corporate. It was about those 50,000 employees that were out in the field, which was good. There's probably things they could have done for the corporate team to make them feel more engaged.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. I think Man, so at Rackspace, you've got the entry level team person who would be walking by the CEO's desk, but everybody, for the most part, if is there, and that's a huge difference. I mean, the transparency, all of that. But then Rackspace went through changes, I think,
Right.
and you were, okay, so you were there 2007 to 2018. You took a 3-year break. We'll dive, I think, into your work journey, but just on the Rackspace piece, a couple of things that you saw change, or a couple of lessons learned that you would pull out of everything that company went through.
So when I came back in 2012, I was gone like 2000. No, I was gone 12 to 15. When I came back in 2015, I actually led some of the layoffs. I'm trying to think now if it was before or after, whatever, doesn't matter.
2016 was like the first major major
okay.
one. Yeah.
And so I actually feel like we did a really good job through that activity. I mean, we had reached out to companies across the city and let them know, like the day before, that there were going to be layoffs, and if they had any open positions, could we send people their way? Like, it was, I mean, we were wanting to take care of those employees, and so that was a positive thing that I saw, even though we had to go through that change. I think what I saw in the recruiting end, like the hiring, I didn't see that we had a good plan in our workforce planning. So I feel like we were very reactive in our hiring, and there weren't a lot of, at least when I was there, it didn't feel like there were a lot of gates or, checks and balances that as we hired, it was like, hiring's open again. Let's bring all these people in. And then oh crap, now the business is down. Let's lay off. Like that whole pendulum, I feel like there was an opportunity there to just be more thoughtful in the hiring. I think those are the two. And I'm a huge Lanham fan, right? I feel like when Lanham was CEO, that like he was the most transparent, high energy, I mean, ADD, but like he was just a great leader. And so I feel like the culture, I even sent him a note recently. I'm coming up on my 100th episode, my 100th podcast episode, and I really want to have him as a guest because to me, he is the reason that the culture, him and probably Graham laying that foundation. Yeah. That Rackspace started with such a great culture.
Yeah. Hey, Lanham, if you're here, if you're listening to this, go on to Wendy's pod.
Reach out.
He's not. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot that Lanham and Graham set and built but everybody picked up and ran with. So,
yeah, absolutely.
That first layoff in 2016 was so impactful because it was like a lot of the tech companies that have recently had to go through layoffs. It was for so long, Rackspace did not have to do that. Yeah. Maybe it was, in the product group where you're investing more in one product to another, so you're targeted. But that one was a huge shock, I think. And looking back on it, I think it's what you're saying, and Rackspace tried to do it. I think the leaders tried to do this in a lot of things: is take the core values and play them out into the decisions. How do we work this out and do it in a way that is true to who we are, even something as painful as those layoffs.
Yes, so. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
no, go on.
I was just going to say that's a lot of what I believe in my Thrive Culture framework. That T is tribal values. Like I feel like that is one of the most important things. It's not everything, right? But we really did have a clear understanding of what was expected of us, how we should treat the customer, how we should treat each other. I think those values are really important.
Can you run through the rest of the Thrive framework?
I would love to. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
So the T is, and so I came up with this framework because of a book called The Burnout Challenge. Christina Maslach, it was a professor at I believe Stanford, maybe UC Berkeley. But she said she did a ton of research on burnout and has over the last decades, and found like these are the things that cause burnout. And so I took those things and flipped them and said, okay, if an organization wants to help prevent burnout, here's the things, here's the system that they could do to work that way. Right.
That's awesome. So, brilliant. Yeah.
So the T is tribal values. I think having employees understand the way to work is really important, and they get to choose. Like, I align with these values or I don't align, and I get to choose whether I want to work at that organization or not. The H is helpful processes and systems, right? Not, if you don't, some organizations aren't big enough to maybe have processes defined, and we didn't at Rackspace for a long time. But understanding roles and responsibilities, that's the first step in really having clarity around role, and the next step would be really having processes and systems that really enable the work that needs to be done. The R is a responsive listening strategy. So not just having a feedback loop with employees, but I've seen so many organizations miss the step of then going back to the organization and saying, here's what we heard, and we can't do this, and here's why, or we can do these things, but just having that responsive feedback loop. The I is inspiring inclusivity and belonging. I think at the end of the day, everyone wants to feel like they are a part of something greater. And I think at Rackspace, we did it in ways like the strengths, like having the strengths was this common language that we understood, here's why you behave the way you do, and here's what you're good at, and here's what I'm good at. And so from that to everything from that to employee resource groups, where you have this kind of, sense of belonging. The V is visible career and development paths. So a lot of times in organizations, there may be development dollars available for your people, but they have no idea, right? Or they don't know what that next step is for them. And really, one of the reasons why people burn out is they don't see a path, and they just feel like they're constantly churning and working hard, but not going anywhere. And then the E is empowering rewards and recognition. At a minimum, you should be paying market value for your employees. But how are you rewarding and recognizing, going back to those core values, right? How are you rewarding the right behaviors, from everything to pay to just acknowledging wins?
That's awesome. And we can find these at culturecoachwendy.com.
Yes, you can.
So if somebody wanted to read more about it, I think it's, those are the kind of things that you kind of sit down and you ingest and you take the time. It's good. So we talked about the corporate, like big companies, Whataburger, Rackspace, but what about like 5-person, 10-person? Does this stuff, have you found that applies there as well?
Yeah, that's actually a lot of who I'm working with right now. So nonprofits, small businesses, agencies with about 20 to 40 employees. And that's where I'm starting with the culture compass, with the mission, vision, core values, and making sure that is really, that those are talked about and understood. And then starting to embed those core values is really where I work with in those smaller organizations. But it's a great, you're not going to have an employee resource group in a 20-person organization, right. But that's where you can have, maybe you do DISC, or maybe you do strength finders, or what's that common thing that helps you understand each other better, have curiosity about the other people on the team. So I definitely think it is from the small business to the large corporate business.
Are you loving it?
Yes. Yeah, I am. I think it's interesting right now. Probably 60% of what I do is more building things, right? From the framework to the marketing to the networking. Like it's a lot of. I'm not doing as much of the work, yet, but I've got enough clients that it balances, because you have to do the marketing stuff too. Right. So I think right now it's heavy in that kind of business building phase. And, hopefully as I grow more,
Yeah.
hire people.
Yes. When did you launch?
So I left Whataburger 2 years ago, but it took me a year to figure out what I wanted to do. Like, I didn't leave to go do this. I left without a plan, pretty abruptly. It was pretty, not the way, I'm not super proud of how I left. But so it took me a year. I went and got certified as a coach. I thought I was just going to do one-on-one coaching, thought I couldn't go near a corporation because I was so burnt out. Just the thought of it made me cringe. But a year ago I was like, no, I know how I can help, and I want to help. I want to help people, sure, but I have to help the organizations so that they can be better to their people. I think there's plenty of people right now helping individuals with coaching or meditation or, here's all the self-help stuff. But there is that role of the organization. And I feel like I can help leaders build those cultures. So it's been about a year.
How are you on your burnout journey? Do you feel like you've recovered?
Yeah, yes. And it's still like a journey because I am activator, achiever, responsibility. I started out really slow, but then once I had this idea a year ago, I can get up at 5 a.m. and work until 10 p.m. easy. And I really have to look at myself in the mirror and say, this is not like, you got to practice what you preach. And, I'm 53, and I heard somewhere the other day that women now live to the age of 83. So I'm like,
heck yeah.
I've got 30 years. Like, let's go.
Let's go. Yeah.
It's not a sprint.
That's right.
Yeah.
So one thing about burnout that I've heard and experienced is by the time you realize you're burning out, it's like way too late. So how do you talk to people about recognizing, a lot of people that we talk to or, connect with, if you think of a business owner or just somebody going for it, like they're putting in those hours that you're talking about, and there's, thinking of work, family balance, like life work balance, but then it's more than that, so how do you coach people into saying you're burned out, you don't know it, but this is what you look for?
It's hard because a lot of people in that situation don't want to hear it. They're like, I don't have a choice. Okay. They feel like they don't, they're building this business or they're climbing the corporate ladder, and they're like, this is just what it takes to get it done. And so I think it's about priorities. And unless you prioritize yourself in that, it's just not, there isn't really a work-life balance. I think you have to make it happen. And, if you prioritize your kids, if you prioritize going to the gym, all of those things, it makes a difference in the long run. And I've found I'm not that person. I don't prioritize my health. I did prioritize my son when he was home. But I feel like I'm not built that way. And so it really does take, okay, Wendy, you're 53. Like, if you want to work and be alive till 83, let's get to the gym. Mm-hmm. So I think, in working with individuals, it really is about their desire. It's just like working with leaders. Like, if they don't get it, mm-hmm. it's hard to influence.
Right. And if we're just throwing a dart at a dartboard for this percentage of people are burnt out, what are you guessing?
The numbers are really high. I have seen the statistics, and I want to say 65%, but I don't know. That would probably just be throwing a dart.
Yeah.
But leaders are more burned out. Definitely at the higher, especially at the C-suite level, there is definitely a higher level of burnout. But even among your regular employees.
Yeah.
With the clients that you have been working with over the past year or more, what have been a couple common things that are just not in place that you think these are quick wins usually?
The mission, vision, and values, for real. That seems, that's it. And it sounds
they just don't have them. Or
Well, there have definitely been organizations that do not have core values. There's a lot of confusion around mission and vision. So it's interesting. A lot of people don't like the vision is really the mission statement, and so I think.
Can you clarify those for us real quick?
Yeah. So the mission is the why. It's why you're in business. What is the purpose that you started the business? And the mission statement will never change as long as that business is intact as that business. The vision is where you're headed. It's what you want to get done. And that changes. It changes with a leadership change. It changes after 10 years and you've reached a vision that you've set. But that's really important for employees to understand where you're headed. And then the core values are the how. It's how you expect things to get done, the behaviors you're looking for that roll up to those core values. And so I have found that either they don't have a mission, vision, and core values, or they have it, but they haven't talked about it in 10 years. I just helped a nonprofit define their core values, and now we're integrating them. And they've been around for 30 years, and they didn't have core values. So I think these are words that we've been saying since probably the 80s, but until you actually apply it, it doesn't help.
Yeah, it's if you're using it as a checklist when you start the organization, and then it's never revisited, you're going to look up and you're going to be way off course.
No, it reminds me of like some of these books that I have on the shelf that I bought that sit on my shelf, and they look great, and that's kind of what people do. Is like, our mission's over there. It looks great behind me. Yeah. We're not going to read it actually.
Yeah.
And I think about culture being it's just the way that you're doing things. And so there's going to be organic things that happen that you didn't intend, but then there are going to be intentionally, you can build habits of working. And those two are very different. So if you're not integrating your values daily, right, then you're doing something. It's just not going to be what you want to do. And that could be a very, I don't know. Like, I think that's what employees are buying into or not at the end of the day.
Yeah. And when I've thought about who my target audience is, I've struggled with CEO versus CHRO. But I really believe it's the CEO because they have to get it. Like, they have to buy into it. The HR team can say these are the core values, but like if it's not being led from the top, I just think it falls flat, especially, well, in small organizations and in large organizations. It's probably easier in the larger organizations to have a leader over a team, like a VP that gets it and sets the tone for that larger team. But in smaller businesses, especially, you have the leader, the CEO, founder, whatever, has to be engaged with it.
Can we pivot?
Absolutely.
Talk to us about your podcast. Like, when did you decide I want to do this? And then what's that journey been like?
Yeah. So it started out that first year. So I left in October, and in February, I started the podcast. And my goal was to talk to women who were in the professional world that had managed to not burn out, that were like high up in the organization, VP level or above, that were just doing the thing and they weren't burning out. And I called it Authentic Energy. And it was about really protecting your energy, right? And who were the women that were managing to do this? Every single person I talked to was either about to leave their organization or, were secretly telling me I'm burning out. Like, nobody was like, I've got it. And so I think it's been a great experience. About a year ago, I changed it to the culture coach, from that authentic energy, again, with that shift to the corporate, away from the individual. And so now I seek out CEOs to come on to say, here's how I'm being intentional about culture. Here's how I've seen it help my business, help my people, all of that. But what's been so rewarding for me is it's helped me to find my voice. It's helped me to find, it's like a creative outlet. I'm creating something and no one's telling me how to do it. You know what I mean? When you're in corporate for so long, 30 years with someone telling me how to do things or checking my work or, and I get to just create something, you guys know, right? Like nobody's telling you to edit it this way or,
Right.
whatever. And except maybe there's two of you, so maybe y'all tell each other, but
I just do whatever he tells me to do.
it's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. You have a lot of guests. Like you said, you're coming up on 100. As I scan through, Emily McQueen jumps out.
Yeah. Did you work with her?
No, I don't know who that is. Can you tell us about her?
Yeah. So she was at Rackspace for a while in the talent development area. And then she went to Rocket something. It was a startup. And she is just a phenomenal, actually a lot of what I learned about talent strategy and talent development, I learned from her at Rackspace. And I don't know if she's still at the Rocket company right now or not, but she's phenomenal. Yeah. Just women like her that are out there doing their thing and successful. It's been a lot of fun.
Emily worked in the tobacco industry, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I worked with,
you remember her?
I worked with her. Patrick did not.
No,
okay,
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was a powerhouse.
Yes, for sure.
New Rocket.
New Rocket. Thank you. Yeah.
She's still there. It looks like as long as LinkedIn is correct.
Yeah.
No, it jumps out because you did 3 episodes with her.
Yeah. She had a lot.
Yeah. There must be a lot in there.
She had a lot of great, again, because I learned so much from her. And when I think about like having built out a framework for culture, like she's a framework person too. And so, yeah, it was a good vibe there.
I've got a curveball question.
Okay.
So I just read this morning that Andy Jassy, CEO of Amazon, announced that he is going to start removing the middle management. I have zero context into why or anything, but as somebody who coaches organizations, if you were working with somebody and they came and they said they were going to do this, is this a green flag? Is this a red flag? What are you doing here?
Yeah. Without the context, I think, my gut is that I'd look at that leadership team. I definitely think there is such a thing as too many layers. Whether you remove from the middle or the top, I think that I'd be curious what the philosophy is there.
Right.
It looks like he's trying to make it a flatter company. So cutting out a layer or two. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting.
It's an interesting move. I mean, I think when you talk about the strategy, and values and those things, this is where that stuff really comes into play. Is like, what are you trying to get, and then what's best for your employees. I'm sure Amazon is more like a Whataburger, where it's a very distributed workforce. Yeah, as opposed to a lot of people working in just headquarters.
And where are they cutting? Are they cutting in the headquarters? Are they cutting in those distribution centers? Are they, that's interesting. I'll have to check that out.
It is. But I think like one of the things that I jumped to was, oh man, as somebody who worked in an organization starting at entry level and went up. Yeah. Like that middle layer was key. Sometimes it's hard to get through. Sometimes it's hard to get into. But from a development perspective, from a learning perspective, that was really important. And then one other quick thought on it. There was a guy who wrote a book called Only the Paranoid Survive. He led Intel for several years. Andy Grove is his name. But he talked about when companies are being disrupted, it's the middle layer who figure out what to do without knowing that they're doing it. It's just because they're looking at the everyday decisions and where do I get the most reward for my money? And so he credits some of the pivot that he took Intel through to that middle layer, but with his strategic view, being able to step in and say, why are you doing this? This is what's happening. And he would take them there. So it's just...
So Will, what do you think about this guy's decision?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I mean, I think the context piece matters, but obviously I'm immediately not a fan of it.
Yeah. Well, they're the closest to
clear.
your point. They're the closest to the customer, right? And so when you, especially probably in an organization like Amazon, when you are, that upper level is, I can imagine, so far removed that to take out that middle level, it feels like it would handicap them. But again,
I mean, who are we?
Yeah.
We're not Andy. He's a smart guy.
Yeah.
Wendy, in your journey, in your career, so you said, okay, 30 years, you've been working, you've jumped, you've started businesses, stepped out of corporate, back into corporate. But just like walk us through that. What was your first job?
My first job out of college, I worked in high school. I worked all through college, waiting tables, putting myself through college. So I've worked for a long time, longer than 30 years. But leaving college, my first job was actually as a manager for my stepmother's. She had a temp agency, and I oversaw the blue collar workers. Like, I had to literally call people and remind them to wake up at 6 a.m. to catch the bus to make it to work, because we had placed them at these warehouses. So from a very young age, I was managing. But after that, I wanted to travel, and I couldn't. A lot of my friends after college were going to Europe and backpacking, and I couldn't afford to do that. So I applied for work on to be a flight attendant or to work on a cruise ship. And I got 0 offers to be a flight attendant and 3 job offers to work on a cruise ship. So I worked on a ship for a year. I lived on the ship, and then worked in their corporate office in Miami for a year.
Where'd you guys go on the ship? Where was this Caribbean?
So we did the Caribbean. We did New York to Bermuda. That was my first run. We did that for a bit. Then we went down to the Caribbean for a couple months, through the Panama Canal, up the West Coast, and then I did the Alaska run.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Really great experience. Learned a lot at a very young age. And then again, moving to Miami, working in their corporate office for a year in marketing and overseeing the people that were on the ship that had done what I did. Mm-hmm. But I won't bore you with my whole career, but it is exciting what I did next, because I came back to San Antonio where my family was, and my same stepmother who had the temp agency said, we're looking for a temp to be the assistant to the executive director for the NCAA Final Four event in 1998. And I did not know at the time if that was professional basketball, if that was collegiate. Like, I didn't have a clue, but I took the job. Had so much fun. We put on the 1998 Final Four, and it was awarded to us that we were going to have the women in 2002 and then the men in 2004. And my boss got married and moved to Boston. So I told her boss that I wanted that job to be the executive director for the NCAA Final Four when it was back in 2002 and 2004. And I got that job. And so I put on the Final Four event that was in San Antonio during those years. It was a lot of fun.
That's fun. Yeah. So, when you had that conversation, like, I mean, that takes guts to say, I want that job.
Yeah.
Do you remember that process? And
yeah, I remember it like it was yesterday. I've always just gone after what I want. Right. And I told her, I said, I was the assistant. Like, I watched everything she did. She was a great leader. She took me to all the meetings. So I saw everything, the behind the scenes. And I said, I know I can do this. And this was so after the Final Four in 98, like, we were all without a job. And so she said, go get another job. And then if by 2000, if you still want this job for the O2 Women's Final Four, we can talk about it. And so I went and got another job. I worked for the San Antonio Convention Visitors Bureau and the Freeman Coliseum. And then I came back to her in 2000 and I said, I want this job. And she said, it's yours. I even negotiated my salary. Like I felt
That's
like
awesome.
I know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Man. So
I was going to say, like, as you're going through that, let's see, that was 25 years ago. So like, what kind of things are you picking up along the way that you're noticing, you're taking notes, and that, contribute to like where you are at this point?
Yeah. I think even coming out of college and working for people, what leadership was, what I learned in college, what leadership was very different, playing out in the real world. And so I learned a lot of what good leaders do, like the woman that took me to all the meetings and exposed me to different people in the work, and then leaders on the cruise ship that were very command and control, and so what I wanted to be and what I didn't want to be. And I don't think I knew what the word culture was at the time. Like that wasn't really a thing. But it definitely, having worked in all these different organizations, shaped, what I believe, that you can intentionally create a culture.
Do you have a story of somebody back then that was just absolutely terrible, and you were like, yeah, this is going in the record books?
I mean, yeah, like it was the cruise ship days were pretty brutal. I was the program coordinator. I designed the daily program that goes under the passengers' doors to tell them which port
that's
they're
awesome.
going to. But the other responsibility that came with that role was I was the assistant to the captain, the staff captain, and the hotel manager. So if there was an event or something, a crisis, which did happen while I was on the ship, I had to go up to the captain's quarters and take notes and put together a memo. Like this was, I'm dating myself, but this was the 90s. It weren't computers. So, but it was like, I was at the beck and call of these officers. They would, because we didn't have cell phones, like I would leave the ship during my time off and they would send officers out to find me where I was on the island and tell me I had to come back and take some notes, or it was just, it was
really short leash. Yeah. I mean, being an assistant to 3 different positions is insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
but
then after, what's that?
I was young and I was getting to travel. So,
Well, yeah, you got to kind of go discover, it's amazing the different experiences that you've had and what it's turned into, that's kind of fun. So after NCAA 2004, it's successful and you don't want to do it again after that, or you're ready for the next thing.
So by that time I was a single mom. I had Nicholas. He was born in 2003. So a year before the Final Four. And I didn't want to do events anymore because, I just thought it was going to be grueling with a child. And so there was a position available in Houston for the WNBA team at the time. It was the vice president of business operations. And so again, I said, I want that job, and I got it. And so I moved to Houston with my son, and I was there for a year. It was the winningest team in the NBA, in the WNBA at the time, but they hadn't hired a leadership team to run that organization. It was being run by the Rockets organization. And so they hadn't invested any of the money that they'd made over the decade of winning WNBA championships. They hadn't invested in the organization. So I got there, they were in the red. It was the first time they'd ever hired. I was basically the CEO of the organization, but it was a VP title because it was under the Rockets. And I spent a year there, and I worked hard to turn it around, but I think I was kind of like a last ditch effort. When I left, they sold the organization. So they sold that team. Mm-hmm. But it was another great learning experience.
So then you come back to San Antonio.
Yep. So I came back in 2005 and I became the CEO of the Palmer Drug Abuse Program, working with kids that struggled with addiction. I did that for 2 years. And then in 2007, that's when I got to Rackspace.
Got it. Yeah.
And
stepped
that is
in.
my complete story.
That's, yeah. Well, I mean, not really. That's just till 2007.
Connecting some of the dots, but yeah.
That's, first of all, that's really, it's fun. Those are the NCAA,
Yeah.
WNBA. Those worlds are not ones that a lot of people get to play in.
Yeah.
So that's cool. It's also cool because you've had to fight. You were one advocate for,
Yeah.
I think, organization and stuff, but being in that role, probably male dominated,
Absolutely.
that's a lot of hard work, and it's neat that you, one, persevered all of that, and then two, I think we're successful in it. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a piece to the burnout that comes from being in that male dominated world for so long, in sports and even in corporate and on the cruise ship. I mean, completely male dominated leadership there. That as a woman, you play this role to be tough and to kind of fit in. I remember in college, I learned how to play golf so that when I got into the corporate world, I could play with the guys,
Yeah.
I'm still learning how to play golf.
He hasn't started, Wendy. Yeah. Okay, keep going.
But anyway, for so long, it's a bit of a facade, not completely, right? I was doing what I wanted to do, and I was asking for all of these challenges, but it was, you have to play a different role.
Do you feel like there were times where, because you were a woman, that it would, you had to, I mean, I know you talked about going over, but like if there's a man and a woman up for the same position that it wasn't going to work out?
I think probably more in the corporate roles at Rackspace. I think I might have gotten passed over a couple times, but like for that WNBA role, I was hired because I was a woman for sure. They wanted a woman in that leadership role. The NCAA thing.
We want women. We just want them in their place.
Right.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. I've never had to experience it on my end, but one thing that, some of the people that I've hired, is one practical thing is like helping young women in the field, like learn how to negotiate for themselves and their salaries, because a lot of times men will do it and women will not.
Yeah.
And so I've really tried to encourage like some of the people that I've worked with at the coffee shop, for instance, like advocate, I'm going to help you and I'm with you, but let me, advocate for yourself in this, because you have to do it and you're worth it. Like that's the other thing, is you're not advocating for something that you're, it's just a wild hair. Like this is actually, you deserve a raise. Let me help you put it together. Yeah.
I think that's so great that you do that, Patrick. And one thing that I do believe in pay transparency. I think it's probably a really hard thing to do once an organization is already established, but there were so many times where I didn't know. I mean, I didn't know what my male counterparts were making, so I didn't know if I should ask for more. Was that offer that they just made me fair? Was it not fair? So I think the lack of transparency, a lot of times we're handicapped by just not knowing, like thinking,
right.
$50,000. Okay. Like I'm making 35 now. So if you're going to pay me 50, cool. Not knowing that the guy, my peer is making 65 or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We got a long way to go on that.
Yeah.
But, Will, what else you got?
I mean, I think we asked, this is kind of just a fun question, but what is something, this is Patrick's question, actually.
What is something, because I always get in trouble for it, but what's something you're good at that doesn't matter? Like over the course of your life, you're like, man, I'm really good at this, but it's like, it really doesn't have any professional or really life significance. It's just random.
Yeah. I love booking travel.
For yourself or for others, or
for myself, for the family. Like I love to look for the good flights. I love to look for the right hotel or Airbnb or I thought for a long time I wanted to have a travel agency, and then that doesn't really mean, they exist still, but anyway, yeah, I love planning travel. Now, I don't know if I were doing it for someone else that it would be as much fun because I'm not going to the place, but yeah.
But booking travel and finding a good deal, you can enjoy that and not go on the trip. Somebody else goes on the trip and you love it.
I don't know. I haven't done that. I just know that when we go places, like I don't want to go if somebody else is planning it. Like it's a little bit of a control issue too, maybe, but
that's fine. That's good.
That's a great thing to be good at. That's a stressful thing for me, but if you love it, you're good at it.
Yeah.
Man, it's a gift.
Yeah. It's fun.
That's nice. Well, Wendy, thank you for joining us. I think it was a fun conversation. We scratched the surface all across it. We didn't really dive into that 3-year span when you left Rackspace and other things.
Oh, yeah.
I think we left some to be wanting. We can revisit that later.
Well, yeah, we really appreciate the time. I think the burnout journey is so relatable to so many people, and it's just like if people took the time to take care of themselves, we'd be healthier. We'd enjoy our lives more. And it's like, don't love your job because it's not going to love you back. And take the time you need. So I love that we brought that up. We hadn't hit on burnout yet on our podcast, so it's good to talk about it.
You guys, thank you so much for having me on. I was so excited to catch up with you guys again. This has been really great.
Business Cake is produced by Sound Ops. The music is written by Philip Cusius, and this is hosted by Will and Patrick. If you enjoyed it, please rate us 5 stars wherever you find your podcasts.